Thank you for clocking in with me, your girl Lo, and cheers to a new playlist on my channel called Dark History, where we unpack the dark side of history, from historical figures, diseases, locations, and events. And today I'd like to dedicate my first video on this new playlist to a historical creature that has captivated my mind since a young age, the mermaid. So what is a mermaid? By definition, a mermaid is a sea-dwelling creature, described as having a head and body of a woman and a fishtail below the waist. The English word of the mermaid is a compound of the term mere, an old English word for sea, and maid, a young girl or woman. Now, when the stories of mermaids began, we really don't have an exact location or time frame, a continent, but it's very evident that the story of mermaids travels 1,000 years ago from a vast variety of different cultures and locations on Earth. Now, what a mermaid may symbolize or what they may do for people, good or bad, it really depends on the culture or the location on Earth that you're coming from. So I like to begin my journey of mermaid in Africa. In West, South, and Central Africa, mythical spirits called Mami Wama, water as mother. These spirits were surprisingly had no gender. They can either appear as man or woman, but they were meant to guide their people through the water. Now, moving from Africa, a more relatable, kind of just brain memory place that we think of when we think of mermaid mythology and a location on Earth is ancient Greece and Rome. And their mermaids are very similar to appearance and character of European mythology. And I know that has a lot to do with European influence and how it really revolutionized, really influenced the west part of the world. An interesting Greek folktale was the story of Thessaloniki, who was Alexander the Great's sister, who was a very, very, very loyal sibling to Alexander in life and death. In 295 BC or BCE, formed into a mermaid in the Aegean Sea. She would unleash a storm on sailors who denied that Alexander conquered and ruled forever. And this was something, if you really look into Alexander's reign, he was a ruler that believed that his death and his accomplishments, the way he lived, would go beyond his grave. And he was very right. We still talk about him today. So that was very accurate. But there are drawings of Thessaloniki being as tall as some tsunami waves and destroying those who denied and did not acknowledge Alexander. In Europe, the translation of the mermaid is the Rosalaki. The Rosalaki is a water nymph of the Slavic mythology, and they were usually regarded as spirits of fertility and agriculture. It was believed that many women would actually bathe in the water that these creatures were seen in the hope to carry children, and they were also worshipped for blessing harvests and crops. But by the 1800s, these creatures took on a more darker turn and were believed to be the ghost of women who died violent deaths by drowning. And in their rage, they would lure men and children to their oceanly death. And this really makes me think of, even though it's different, makes me really think of the legend of the Yora, the weeping woman, have an exact time or location of where our traditional views of mermaids came from. And this has nothing to do with Disney's way of making the most tragic and brutal and harsh stories super cute for the box office price, because they know how to do that. It actually has a lot to do with Ireland and Merrows, which were their mermaids. Female Merrows with their beauty and long green hair, their counterpart male Merrow, who was considered to be more cruel and more vicious than men in Ireland religion, they became known for ruthless behavior and inappropriate relationships with women. A lot of evidence to back up that it was not European eyes who first discovered or first came in contact with these creatures. One of the earliest mermaid legends occurred in Syria around 1000 BC. The goddess Atargis, she dove into the lake and formed into a fish. gods believed did not deserve to lose her beauty. So only her bottom half became a fish, and she kept her human form. Very blurry on, do they bring goodness, blessings, or do they bring curses and despair? And from the folklore of the sea, mermaids bring both. While in the sea for months or years, it almost was easy or expected culturally to blame the harshness and the unpredictableness of the sea on a creature. Mermaids were reflections of the disaster and the beauty of the ocean. And in the 16th through the 20th century, we see a lot of ships on the boat area with wooden carvings of mermaids. They were decorated to honor the mermaids and appease the sea, and the assurance of good weather and finding a safe way back to land. And images of mermaids were also found on maps used to label areas that had shipwrecks or bad weather. So in a way, it was as if these creatures, they had to bring both. They brought balance. Then it was a sailor's choice to risk to get well oil or to fish or to explore. Or it was up to him who's willing to face these creatures and what they had to bring to the crew. And now a quick dark history path that I really want to break down while I was doing my research was, and it kind of brought an aha moment for me, really clears up confusion. The difference between a siren and a mermaid. Sirens are not mermaids. In Greek mythology, sirens were creatures who were half woman and half bird, and some cultures also were in the water. Mermaids have been viewed as having a more good and bad meaning. They were creatures who were half fish, half human. However, sirens have gone down in history as always being malicious and dangerous. They were the ones who attracted sailors with beautiful voices towards the rocky coast of the island they occupied, just to end up killing them. They are the ones known for having vicious cursed eyes, for sharp teeth, even Medusa-like hair. I want to end this video with just kind of breaking down where I think our love and connection, even our visual appeal, comes from with mermaids. And I know a lot to do with literature and paintings before we get into the films that we see today and the amazing cinematography that goes into special effects. One of the most famous stories is Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid, published in 1837 in Copenhagen, Denmark. The mermaid in this story loses her tongue to obtain legs, but every time she walks, her pain is as if she's walking on knives. For the prince that she wants to marry and have a family with ends up marrying someone else. She ends up sacrificing herself and cannot handle the rejection, the end despair, and ends up living with the spirits of the air. And this is why I think a lot of people, especially people who are really into history, they're really into films, really giving you the accuracy. And I know that Disney, we need to keep things kid appropriate. But this is why I think a lot of people either have a problem with Disney or are very admired by it. And very just in awe because they know how to make the most saddest stories, the most profitable and most cutest films and most addicting films. And I will give Disney that. But moving on to the literature that also supported the book was a painting by Evelyn de Morgan, The Sea Maidens, in 1886. Was a breathtaking painting of 5 mermaids embracing one another and staring out to the shore. The reason why I believe that mermaids are such a big part of dark history under mythology or creatures is, of course, our captivation with them. We have kind of created them to have like this cosmetic, beautiful cuteness, innocence about them. Which, yes, there's plenty ways and cultures to back up that is a part of their history. They are known to Thessaloniki, who was able to break off trade routes and kill sailors when they did not acknowledge Alexander's death. You have women who would end up drowning and could not handle the way that they died, would drag men and children to the shores of ocean, to the bottom of the ocean, and murder them. I think they are as alluring and as beautiful and as mysterious as the oceans they occupy. So thank you so much for clocking in with your girl Lo. It's time to clock out, and thank you for joining this side of history. I'll see you next time. Bye.